Hello and welcome back to another episode of All Out Nevada, your go-to podcast for insightful glimpses into the Nevada judiciary. I'm your host, Seth Easley, representing the Supreme Court of Nevada Administrative Office of the Courts. In our last episode, we began an informative discussion on the topic of the Access to Justice Commission. To continue this, let's jump right back in with our guest, Brad Lewis, Director of the Access to Justice Commission. The third charge kind of expands a bit on what you were talking about before with pro bono and self-represented litigants, which is improve self-help and pro bono services.
Right. And so there's a lot of work legal aid can do on their own on this. The commission has had committees on this with various courts involved, the administrative office of the courts involved, the Family Law Self-Help Center, the Civil Law Self-Help Center down in Las Vegas, etc. One of the things we really can do that helps everyone is improve forms, make them easy to read for people, make them appropriate for what the court wants to see, give good instructions so that the forms are completed correctly when they're turned into the clerk. These are all things that we're constantly working on. And right now, the Civil Law Self-Help Center in the 8th District Court in Las Vegas is doing a deep dive into how can they improve the forms, make the instructions better, and improve their website. So this is something that kind of never stops happening, but it's always really critical and important for us. But other things, through a grant from the Department of Health and Human Services Aging and Disability Services Division, we were able to help get a grant that Nevada Legal Services administrated that put legal kiosks in libraries. And I'm sure Alex will talk about that more in part 2. But these, not everyone has broadband access at their home or even a computer or mobile device. Certainly more and more, virtually everyone has a mobile device now, but not all forms are so great to be filled out on a mobile device. And so access to these kiosks at libraries for people can be really helpful for people, and they can't get sort of recommendations there, but they can be guided to information about legal problems. And then we definitely have expanded Ask a Lawyers, where people can just come in for a quick 15-minute session. They'll say, here's my problem, what do I do? Sometimes it takes just a very little bit of guidance to make a huge difference in people's case. So the development and expansion of the Ask a Lawyers are something we work on within that sort of improved self-help and pro bono services. There's a bunch of other stuff, but those are just some example stuff.
Okay, so Charge 4 is quite interesting. It's increase public awareness of the impact of limited access to justice. So why is that important?
Right. So, again, a lot of people may not really know what is access to justice. Access to justice means that everyone has fair access to the courts and the information, legal information they need in the form so that they can present their case in a court, whatever the outcome. And so providing all of that information, but the public knowing that this is an issue, it's something we need to work on, it deserves support. Chances are there's someone in your family which has had to use these services or can access these services that can help with their case. It's better for everyone to know that and raise the awareness around these issues and how they can be approved. One of the things that happens every year, we always try to use the American Bar Association's, the ABA's Celebrate Pro Bono Week, which is I think it's the last week in October every year, to put a lot of these Ask a Lawyer events and special events and informational sessions, etc., within that last week to kind of really focus at least once a year that these services, in fact, are available and that you can access information. Right now, we're working on kind of an interesting project, which is I probably shouldn't be sharing because it hasn't even taken off the ground, but we were working with a TV station with the potential to do an Ask a Lawyer through the TV station, which will obviously make more people aware of it and then be able to be helped if they call into the station with pro bono attorneys or legal aid attorneys. And so, just a couple examples of we do constantly try to increase the awareness of access to justice issues and make sure people are aware that legal aid resources are available, legal aid information is available, that there is a kiosk in a library, et cetera. And it's something that you can never turn the engines off on that. We try to do that all the time.
Okay, so in charge 5 is on the critical topic of funding. It's investigate and pursue increased funding. Can you tell me more about that?
Right. So funding, of course, is a big deal. I think probably the main thing I'll focus on here is IOLTA, because that's the main way the Access to Justice Commission is involved in funding. One of the things we found, if we do fundraising on our own, legal aid organizations are also doing their own fundraising, and we really don't want to overlap with one another and be at cross purposes. But if we focus on IOLTA, certainly no one else is engaged in that other than the commission and the Nevada Bar Foundation. And so, just to backing up a little bit, IOLTA is the third most important source of funding for legal aid in Nevada. The number one source is filing fees, and the number two source is federal grants. That includes the Legal Services Corporation grant, but also the Aging and Disability Services grant, and many other grants related to victims of crime or domestic violence, that type of thing. But after filing fees and federal grants, IOLTA is really critical. And again, it avoids conflicts with legal aid efforts and, with any other fundraising that people are doing. That program has grown quite tremendously during my time here. In 27, I also raised about $2.8 million. And this year in 2025, it's raising $16.6 million. And so from 2.8 million to 16.6 million, that's quite an increase. And we've done that by focusing on things such as the IELTS study and other ways that we can maybe improve IELTS funding. Seth, I probably should back up just for any of the non-lawyers on the call. IOLTA stands for Interest on Lawyer Trust Accounts. And if you're a lawyer, you always have to keep your money separated from your client's money. And all of your client money will be in a trust account. And for small accounts or accounts that will be held for a short period of time, you don't want to be opening up 20 different accounts, and your bank certainly doesn't want to be opening up 20 different accounts. So all of these, I mean, they're kept individually by your name and by the client name, but they're pooled together to raise interest. And that interest, rather because it's going to be so small and it's done for such a short period of time, rather than getting paid back to the client, is actually paid into a fund which funds the Nevada Bar Foundation. And so we'll get into more of that maybe in a bit. But one of the things we've been able to do over the years is really create a partnership with banks. And I really think we have a good relationship with banks. We always ask them for their feedback and tell them what we're doing and have conversations with them on a regular basis. At least once a year, we offer to have meetings with each banks. We're always meeting usually once a year with the Nevada Bar Foundation board, or excuse me, the Nevada Bankers Association board of directors. And so, we're hearing from them, but from that, one of the things they wanted was more recognition for their bank that they're engaged in this program. So we started two new programs, not at the same time, but as we've grown and evolved in this program. The first one was called the Leadership Institution Program, where people could pay a higher rate, but then they would get a logo, they would get a link to their website, they would get a specific banker which a lawyer could contact, and it just makes the process smoother in terms of signing up for an IELTS account for people. And then in the end, we added on a new platinum partner category for that. And those are the banks that pay the highest rate, and they're listed at the top of the page with a special logo. And so, just to give you an example, we have 40 total banks in the Nevada IELTS program. Half of them now are leadership institutions, so paying higher than the actual standard rate. And then of those, 9 of them are the platinum partners. And so these increases in rates help to fund increases in interest, which help to increase the Nevada Bar Foundation grant amount. And so it's been a successful program for us. In fact, in 2024, for the first time, and so far every month in 2025, the total principal balance of money in IOLTA accounts in Nevada exceeds $1 billion. This is the first time since I've been here we've ever been in excess of $1 billion. I believe when I began, it was about $470 million. And so a big difference. And so currently, the rates are still reasonable by many standards. The standard rate in Nevada is 1.25%. The leadership institution rate is 1.5%. The platinum partner rate is 2.25%. We do not always work to get the absolute maximum rate that we can. We work to create a partnership that's a long-term sustained relationship with banks over time to get more interest in the average state would be able to get. And our program has been able to do that. Just a little bit of background on that. This is all done by another committee of the commission, the IOLTA Rate Review Committee. That committee is still chaired by Senior Justice James Hardesty, who is really integral in formulating the IOLTA program and how Nevada has the program set up. If anyone wants to look at SCR 216, SCR 217, that lists a lot of information about the IOLTA program and how it works. But that's a little bit of background. Now, I mentioned before the DHHS grants, the ADA's Aging and Disability Services, ADSD grant. We also work on the state bar's voluntary dues checkoff every year. We do fundraising through the Section Pro Bono Challenge and in a number of ways. But IOLTA is probably sort of the unknown way and sort of interesting information that most people probably don't know that is critical to funding legal aid in Nevada.
That's fascinating, actually. I didn't know much about the IOLTA program, but I mean, that's amazing. And that could be a whole nother topic. Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode of All Out Nevada. We're always striving to bring you valuable insights and education, not just for judicial officers, but for anyone interested in the Nevada judiciary. If you find our content helpful or intriguing, please share your experience with your friends, family, and colleagues. Your support helps us reach a broader audience and ensures more people can benefit from our discussions. Thank you for listening and supporting All Out Nevada. Lastly, the sixth and final charge is recommend legislation or rules affecting access to justice. Can you talk about that?
Right. So I'm not sure of the origination of that language exactly, and I bring that up because the commission does not get involved in any legislative matters or any lobbying. But we do come up with ideas that may need to be affected by legislation or rules. And so the way that this has been split out is if it's legislation, it's not the Access to Justice Commission. Rules, yes. But legislation is worked on by the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. And so the legal service providers help individually to fund this coalition. And then they do work on legislative matters and do lobby for certain things. And just a bit more on that. For example, this year, I know they did, they were highly engaged in 13 bills. 8 of those bills were signed, 5 of them were not signed. This year, they were focused on housing, eviction, and consumer protection. And one of the outcomes, for example, was eviction diversion, which has been a pilot program in the 8th Judicial District Court, is now going to get funded. It's going to be happening in the 2nd Judicial District Court. And so there's $15 million for eviction diversion in Clark County, $5.25 million in Washoe County for eviction diversion, and in the rural, $750,000. And so that's focused on senior citizens, people with disabilities, and my understanding is I believe families with very young children. So, it's targeted to keep some of the most critical people in a way that can help them out if they're facing an eviction. But they did minor guardianship reform. They did some tweaks on how federal benefits for foster children are applied and who can use those funds, things that really matter to the typical client of legal aid. So, yeah, that's kind of our last charge. But as you can see, within each of these 6 charters, there's always something that we're working on, and we really try to focus with every commission meeting and with each committee that we're focusing on something that can make a difference and move the needle on these areas. We try to do it in a methodical manner in concert with all the legal aid providers, the judiciary, and then the individual committees of the Access to Justice Commission, which actually get into the nitty gritty of working on those details.
It's very informative. So, can we talk a little bit about challenges? I'm sure the commission hears about all sorts of problems people want to address. So, can we talk about that for a sec?
Yeah. Well, the federal funding of anything right now is kind of a question. It's
Right.
unknown precisely what's going to happen. The administration did propose, for example, the zeroing out of the LSC budget. However, my understanding is the Senate proposed a $4 million, I think it was, increase to that budget. But there are many other federal grants which could be potentially affected. So funding is always an issue. And the main part of that is just to make sure that we can at least sustain the current level of service delivery and hopefully increase it, of course. But if there's some, of course, but if we have to triage it somehow, we'll figure out how to do that. And we've had some discussions on that and some sideline work, I guess I would say, that we've been doing on that. Another challenge is the availability and the uniformity of forms, especially the ability to electronically file those forms. If you're in some far-flung rural area and you have to travel to a court, your chances are you're taking a day off work just to turn in a form. Really, in today's world, should not be necessary. So I know the AOC is working on this to a great degree, but forms, the improvement of forms, the electronic filing, the uniformity of it across the state, clerks not rejecting certain forms is all something we can work on. I mean, I know one frustration of the legal aid providers is a lot of times they end up finding out through a client that a clerk has rejected a particular form because it said Clark County on it, but the exact same forms are available that don't say Clark County on them in the statewide self-help resource on the Nevada Supreme Court website. And so better education around this area is something we have worked on and try to work with the AOC on. But that's an area that's a challenge that we just need to continue working on. I guess without going into too many challenges, sort of the recruitment and retention of legal aid attorneys has been a challenge, and primarily because they get paid way, way less than most attorneys get. Of course, most people are doing this work because they want to do their work and they're really interested in public service and they're really looking to help people. But you still need to live in the real world and get paid a living wage. And so, because of increases in IOLTA funds, there have been some increase to legal aid salaries and ways to help retain them more. But it's something that's always a challenge. I know the legal aid providers are always working on. So those are the ones I'd name for the purposes of this podcast.
Okay. So, as we wrap up this episode, I did want to ask, is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience?
I'd say one thing from our research that I thought was interesting that I think a lot of people don't know is that there is a return on legal aid. When you take the amount of money put into legal aid versus what is returned to the local and Nevada economy, it's great. It's $7 return on investment for every $1 spent on legal aid. So there is a return on investment. That's something, quite frankly, that the banks like to see. And it's been good that we've been able to educate the banks on this is not just a big line item, on your spreadsheet. This is money that does these things and has a return on investment. And so that's been helpful to us as we, talk one-on-one with people who are very supportive of legal aid in this program. I would say that's kind of the biggest thing. And then the one thing that I think just for everyone to roll off the tip of their tongue is at the end of the day, legal aid keeps employees on the job and kids in school. Kind of the most important things to most employers is my worker there? And really critical for kids is staying in their same school. That doesn't always happen when they're evicted, for example. But legal aid is a huge part of, they're working on all these 20,000 issues, but it's keeping people at their job, maybe because they have a car, available to them because legal aid helped with a unscrupulous auto mechanic. It keeps their kids in school because they weren't evicted or they were able to keep their job. It just prevents a lot of cascading issues. And I think legal aid is, in fact, a part of the safety net and is really critical if you think of just someone you know that might need some help and needs a little leg up. That's something that legal aid is going to be there for.
And lastly, but certainly not least, if anyone wants any more information or they would like to reach out, what should they do?
Sure. Well, you can, of course, reach out to me. My email is bradl, BRADL, at nvbar, as in Nevada bar, nvbar.org, O-R-G. So you can email me directly. Happy to talk to anyone. If you have any great ideas or something you have a problem with or any concerns, feel free to bring them up with us. We want to be open and transparent, communicating with everyone at all times. And our best information often comes from the judiciary and the public. So this is a perfect podcast for us. The website of the State Bar of Nevada is nvbar.org. And I would point out a few things. If you search on access to justice at nvbar.org, you're going to get to our resources page where a lot of the information I referenced, such as our legal needs study or the statewide service delivery plan, you can find those there among a lot of different information. If you search pro bono client, you're going to find a list of all the legal aid providers in Nevada. So just go to nvbar.org, put in the search pro bono client. You're going to see Legal Aid Center, Nevada Legal Services, and all the legal aid providers, as well as if you search for self-help, you will find all of the statewide self-help resources that are available to people that are really the right resources versus people out there Googling and a lot of the wrong stuff comes up. These are all Nevada-based things that are approved by the Nevada Supreme Court or different courts that are done by the Family Law Self-Help Center or the Civil Law Self-Help Center. We encourage you to use those resources, ask us any questions, share any ideas you have, and we really appreciate everyone's support of access to justice issues, access to justice in Nevada, and the opportunity to make sure that everyone really has their fair day in court, whether they have a lawyer or not.
Awesome. That's amazing. And Brad, I just want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me and the audience to talk about the important work of the Access to Justice Commission. And I just can't express my gratitude enough.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
A heartfelt appreciation to our guest and to everyone who has tuned into this podcast. Before we wrap up, here are a couple of quick, important reminders. For continuing legal education credit, be sure to complete a certificate of attendance and email it to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or comments, we welcome your input. You can email us at jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov or submit your topic ideas through our topic suggestion form linked in the episode description. We value and look forward to hearing from our listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes of I'll Allow It Nevada. This is Seth Easley signing off. Take care, Nevada.